35%.
Really?
Yes, but you got to look at what the facts are and what happened between then and now and what has happened to the imports and the exports.
We are going to take a call before we get back to what we were going to get back to. Is that cool?
Cool.
Okay.
It's good.
Floyd, good morning. Welcome. You are on with Marita and Noon. How are you?
I'm great, Terry. And Marita, you're not on often enough. You truly are not.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
We will make sure that that is not the case.
Oh, I hope so.
Thank you.
You know, the truth has got to come out. One, I hope I'm not straying, but the EPA and DOE, the horrible damage they have done to this country, my beautiful America.
Amen.
People have lost jobs. They have lost their home, and they don't realize, hey, it has an awful lot to do with the EPA. The EPA is working against America, for Saudi Arabia, for Brazil. Come on, folks, let's work for America. Let's dump all this money in our pockets. Keep it out of theirs. But we do need the truth. I mean, there is so much to know about these whatever they are. I'm just so angry about it. And I think maybe you could bring out the truth about what the EPA and the president is helping to do to our country. Now, I will get off because I'm ready for a rant.
Well, let me mention for Floyd a column that I wrote a year ago, last October, I believe. There we go. Last October, I wrote a column called Obama is the OPEC President. And Floyd would be interested in that. And if you just Google my name and Obama is the OPEC President, you'll find that. And what I addressed in that particular column, as you probably don't recall, but I focus on these energy issues, is in September, a year ago, election cycle, OPEC announced that they were going to, specifically Saudi Arabia, that they were going to pump more oil. The price of gas was up around $4 last summer, a year ago summer, you may recall. And there was a lot of talk about that if gas is over $4 a gallon, Obama's not going to get reelected. That the public will, that's kind of the price point at the moment where the public gives pushback.
Yeah.
And so the price of gas needed to drop. Well, OPEC announces we're going to pump more oil. Well, when they pump more oil into the global market, what does that do? It drops the price. They announced not only are we going to pump more oil, but we're going to pump it through November. Specifically, that was what they said. And the links to that are in my column, the links to the news story. They said we're going to pump that through November. Now, I of course, read that to mean we're going to pump this through the election. Now, when you think about it, why would OPEC be doing such a thing, dropping the price of the resource, when the reality is, as I have in my current OPEC column, is that the Middle East states really need all the income they're getting these days because that's how they kind of placate their people and keep from having more Arab Springs. Okay, but why would they be willing to take in more or less income? Why would they purposely drop the price by pumping more?
If they're going to benefit some other way.
Well, they're going to benefit. So think about it. What is the benefit that they got? My line I like to use when I'm speaking is, if only we understood when President Obama said that he was for an all-of-the-above energy policy, if only we understood that he meant none of the below. And see, that's, if you look at his policies on a grand scale, he is all about keeping the natural resources from being developed. And again, that's part of this rare earth new bill in the Senate that has already passed. A similar one's already passed in the House, by the way. But is the Obama administration, which includes, as Floyd mentioned, the EPA and the Department of Energy, is all about making it difficult to get the resource out of the ground. And this includes the Keystone Pipeline.
Right.
And so that's a whole nother topic.
In fact, we'll talk about that at some point because that was one of the many things on my list today.
But, if Mitt Romney had gotten elected, he made it very, very clear that he understood the energy issues and that he was campaigning on increasing access to federal lands, increasing production. See, OPEC doesn't want that. They don't want America to be energy independent,
right?
Which we are close to being. And the reality is we'll really never be energy independent, for those who want to argue semantics with me, because it's a global supply and it's fungible and all that kind of stuff. But we can be what I prefer to think of as energy secure. And this gets back to, if I may, for a moment what we were talking about before the break about OPEC. That at the time in 1973, we were importing approximately 35% of the oil used in this country came from from OPEC countries, from the Middle East.
Here we are all these years later.
Still at 35%. But here's the difference, what you have to see. And someone wrote a comment on my column about how can you say we're energy independent when we were 35% then and we're 35% now. But you got to see where we were going. In 1970, the oil production in the United States peaked. And it started to drop precipitously. And so in 1973, when the embargo was placed on America, our oil production was going down and our imports were going up. See, we used to be a dominant energy supplier in the world. At the time of World War II, the United States was the number one oil provider to the world. So we used to be, really a powerhouse in that. But it's 1970, our oil production in this country peaked and began to drop off, creating the original energy shortage, the energy scare. And that's really what brought about the renewable energy push at the time. What you may recall in 1970s is when solar panels first became kind of widespread and promoted, not to the degree they are now, but it was that created the energy shortage. The OPEC countries tried to have an oil embargo a couple times, I believe 1950 if I recall correctly, and I believe 1964 if I recall correctly, but they didn't have any real impact because we had surplus supply in this country that we could ramp up production and fill that gap that OPEC caused. But by 1973, because production had peaked and then really drastically dropped, that embargo had a really harsh impact because we didn't have that surplus. Okay, so that was then.
Gotcha.
Oil production continued to decline. Imports continued to go up, much higher than 35%. However, since 2008, the silver lining for America of the Arab oil embargo is that it forced U.S. producers to get more creative. And the fact that it raised the price also made some unconventional techniques financially viable. So the combination of horizontal drilling, which is the big breakthrough, which means you can go down from a well, go down miles underground, and miraculously, I totally don't get how they really do the technology of this, but they can make that drill do a right angle. And there, we've all seen pictures of the Earth strata where there's layers. Okay,
right.
There's layers that have oil. Now they can drill straight through that whole layer, and that's the big thing, but combined with hydraulic fracturing that has unleashed since 2008 U.S. energy abundance.
Visiting with energy goddess Marita Noon this morning. Michael, thanks for joining us on 770 KKOB. You're on with Marita. Go ahead.
All right, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I belong to a Native American tribe, a Native American Indian tribe here in New Mexico, but a lot of the national forums and programs, radio talk programs, there's a segment of Native American Indians that are against, the pipeline and against fracking. And I was wondering if you had encountered any of these organizations or people, and how have you countered their arguments? And it's mostly negative, about fracking and maybe even pipeline spillage or whatever.
Well, certainly. I mean, I can address that not necessarily from a Native American standpoint, although let me just throw in a Native American comment is more where I have dealt more with that is in the Navajo tribe in Arizona and northwestern New Mexico, and how the EPA shutting down those power plants is impacting jobs in the Navajo tribe specifically. And also we've got the coal-fired power plant up there in the Farmington area. And the shutting down, there's 9 coal-fired units in the Farmington Four Corners area. And due to EPA regulations, 5, that's more than half, of those are going to be shut down. And that's going to do, first, it's going to do a lot of harm economically to the entire Four Corners region, Native American and non-Native American both. But the Native American tribes in the area are going to be more severely impacted by those EPA regulations. So that's kind of the comment I have on the specific Native American part. But Michael asked also about fracking, and I have not personally dealt with specifically Native American opposition to fracking, but there certainly is opposition to fracking out there, and it's really misguided. As we were talking here off the air, fracking has been done in this country for more than 100 years. In the late 1800s, nitroglycerin was dropped down a well hole and exploded at the bottom of the hole to loosen up the rock and allow the oil to flow more easily. Now, it's been used really widely in this country since about 1940s. So fracking has been in use forever. Why the sudden concern about fracking, you might ask? And to me, when it's been used successfully, and if it's been used for 60 years, if it did all the things that the environmentalists say that fracking does, we would have heard a lot of stories about it over the last 60 plus years that fracking has been in use. So you might say, why the concern about it all of a sudden? What has happened, I believe, is that, as I mentioned earlier in the show before a break, that the real revolution is the development of horizontal drilling. And then George Mitchell, who died recently, spent 20 years of his life trying to perfect the process of horizontal drilling, combining it with hydraulic fracturing. And those two things together is what has unleashed America's new abundance, which we were talking about earlier, which is why, while we're still importing 35% of our oil from the Middle East, the trend line is going in the other direction. We're producing more, importing less than we were 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And so the combination of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing and the improved technologies, we were also talking off the air about that. I understand, I've not done this yet, but I understand that what they call the frac fluids. Mm-hmm. And think about the frac fluids as, Terry, and as all of us women know, we have a ring on and our fingers swell sometimes.
All right.
So to get the ring off, we wash our hands get them all soaped up,
right,
and then the ring slips off.
It's all about lubrication.
In essence, that's what the frac fluid does.
Okay.
They take little pieces of sand, little tiny pieces of sand, put them in with something that makes it a little slick, put it down the hole, and then they have a little explosion that goes on underground, mm-hmm, and that cracks the rock, and then those little pieces of sand go in and hold that rock open so the oil can come out. Now, that frac fluid generally has things in it that you'd have under your kitchen sink, but I have been told by the industry folks that the frac fluid has reached such a high level of technology. It's grown, it's improved, it's no longer dropping nitroglycerin down a hole, mm-hmm, that the fluids now are so clean, so green, if you will, mm-hmm, that you can actually drink the frac fluids. And I'm going to do this. I haven't done it yet, but I've told the guys I want to go on a well site. I want to go on a site where they're fracking. And now realize also, fracking is only a minute fraction of the entire drilling process. Mm-hmm. It's about a 3-day process where they do what's called a frac job, where they do this process that opens up the rock that allows the abundance to flow through. And so fracking, I'm going to go on a frac job site, and when they have that fluid, I'm going to go drink it.
I'll be darned. And so I want to get back to Michael. Michael, you and Marita were chatting before the break. If you guys want to go ahead. Michael, I know you wanted to respond to Marita.
Yeah, the main argument was the toxicity of the fracking fluid, and also fissures being created, little maybe earthquakes and tremors, and also the tribes that are mostly spearheading the pipeline, anti-thrust against the pipeline are the tribes that will have the pipeline going through the reservations, and the fear of seepage and spillage after that Gulf disaster. So that was the main thrust.
Okay.
Well, I think I already talked about the toxicity of the fracking fluids, mm-hmm, and that first off, it's not what it used to be. I think one line I like to use is, it's not your father's frack job, and there's a lot of fear that has been stirred up unnecessarily about fracking. And as I said, it's been used for a long time. The technology has increased drastically, and where the fracking is taking place, the little explosions that you're talking about and the fear of earthquakes, there's been a lot of studies that are done on that show that is unfounded, that it's so many miles down below the earth. There's layers and layers of rock between where the oil is and where the drinking water is, and we have new equipment, advanced technology that can measure seismic activity. Yes, there is some seismic activity, but calling it an earthquake is really a misnomer. I grew up in Southern California, where earthquakes were a real concern and a real thing, and you felt the earthquake, and the pictures on the wall moved, and you had a real earthquake. What they're talking about with the seismic activity from fracking, it's only because we have increased technology that allows us to measure that minute level of seismic activity that has no impact on what happens on the surface.
Anything else, Michael?
Oh, that's great. You just need to get the word, the truth out. It's this first I've heard of it from her. So it has to be spilled nationwide, just about, because there's so much falsehoods.
There are. And Michael, I really encourage you. I wrote a column about this about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't recall the title that Town Hall gave it offhand, but if you just Google my name, Marita Noon, and townhall.com, there was a new study that was released by an environmental group a few weeks ago that talked about fracking and was full of untruth. And so I kind of took that column or that report from this environmental group called Environment America and tore it apart and in my column. And in my column, one of the things I think is really important about what I write is, while it's a column, it's opinion. It's not just opinion. It's very fact-based. Yes, it has a bias, but it is very fact-based. And I have in my column are full of links to the research that I'm citing about this. And so I would encourage you, specifically on the fracking topic, Michael, to go back and look at that. And if we've got a couple minutes, I want to mention, I said earlier, why is fracking suddenly such an issue when it's been used for so long? And if I may just kind of expound on that a little bit, I believe that fracking has become such an issue because it has upset the apple cart of the environmental community. We talked earlier on the show about the Arab oil embargo and the oil production in the United States in the 70s and how it was declining. And we talked about that that was kind of the creation of the movement for renewable energy, and that's when you first saw solar panels going up on rooftops and so forth. Well, there was a paradigm that was built and a lot of money that was invested into this, so-called green energy, and that we needed to have renewable energy. And as long as the United States had a scarcity model, we were running out, then that gave renewables the push that they needed. But with the combination, as I've mentioned, of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, it has unleashed an amazing abundance of oil and natural gas into the United States and has reduced our imports drastically and has set us up to a place where the Middle East cannot control the United States like it once was able to do. And this is a really great thing. But this abundance has upset this paradigm of a renewable fueled future, because renewables are much more expensive than natural gas and oil. They do not produce 24/7, etc. So in order for renewables to have cost parity, oil has to be scarce, therefore more expensive. If you go to, or you can Google, Sierra Club and Beyond Natural Gas, at the opening of their website, of that section, in the top, the big text at the top, it says clearly that this abundance of natural gas, I don't think it uses the word abundance, but the word it says is that it has displaced the market for clean energy. And that's an important thing to realize. And the Sierra Club website says it right there. It has displaced the market for clean energy because we have so much natural gas. And I believe that's what the whole anti-fracking thing is all about. They can't say don't drill, because the public understands, much like when Sarah Palin was campaigning.
Drill, baby, drill.
Baby, drill. The American public understands the more you drill, the lower the price goes. The more, and that's just economics 101. The more supply, the lower the price.